Well, 25 families were established. The church, Reformed Low Dutch Church of Harlem, the first church of Harlem, was established. We are that church. And because there was a church established, then we received a royal charter to establish the church and to establish this community as Harlem, the village of Harlem. And that was what day? August? 15, 1660, that the church received its royal charter and the village of Harlem received its royal charter simultaneous. So we are royally received.
Amen.
Amen. Amen. I don't think too many other places can say that, but we are. And we are the village of Harlem. So I am going to sit down, let Anthony carry on, come forward, because we have discovered some wonderful things and we want you to know about.
Yeah, couple lights. All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Anthony. I am the architect for the Harlem African Burial Ground Task Force, and this is our collective vision for that site. What you see here highlighted in red is a map of part of East Harlem. This is the 126th Street bus depot as it currently sits. Just for reference, this is 126th Street. This is 2nd and 1st Avenue. And this is important, it's highlighted in red. So the maps we're about to see, every time you see something highlighted in red, this little rectangle, that's going to be our site. But before I move through this presentation, I just want to give a small synopsis. We'll move through historical analysis, then a site analysis, and then the final design. Reverend did a good job for the history, so we'll move fairly quickly through that. But we'll try to condense 400 years of Harlem's history, starting with the Lenape, how it was a verdant natural landscape, then how it became Dutch, then British, then American, and then finally to what we see today. So let's get started. This is the historical analysis, beginning with a series of maps. This represents 1609, and there is evidence, here highlighted in red is our project site, and there's evidence based on artifacts gathered in that area that it used to be a Lenape trading post, a river landing, and that fishing went on there. That's a depiction of what it might have looked like. Again, moving along fairly quickly. 1670, this is a map depicting the Dutch carve-outs. These are farming plots. And here, again, in red is our site. As the Reverend said, around this time, our church and, by extension, the village of Harlem was founded, as was the burial ground, which was used for freed and enslaved Africans who were members of the church. 1782, this is the British headquarters map. This idyllic scene is what the village of Harlem might have looked like from the Bronx. That is the Harlem River you see in front of you. And at this time also the burial ground was opened up to the larger community, not just the members of the church. 1820. So the previous maps showed Upper Manhattan. The next series of maps will be bounded by Lenox, the Harlem River, 116th Street and 135th Street, just for reference. And in 1820, this is what's known as the Randall's Farm map. As you can see here, that the village of Harlem was not what we see today with our street grid, which is very orthogonal, rectilinear. It was actually diagonal, and it faced true north and true south. So this is for solar orientation reasons. Again, our project is in red. Our project is in red. And as you can see, it also extends into the Harlem River. So there's a lot of landfill that occurred over time, and we'll see that in the next series of maps. This next map is a blown-up version of the previous one we just saw, just so you get a better look at what was around this area. You can see a number of little farmhouses, the delineation of farming plots, and a little lake water feature here. Unfortunately, around this time, for financial reasons, the burial ground was used first as a pastoral grazing ground for sheep and other animals, and it was later sold off due to financial reasons. And it was divided among a number of different private landholders. And this little this little square box we see here is a home. And the picture on the upper right-hand corner is a depiction of what that home might have looked like. It belonged to a Judge Timberman. This is 1820. 1896, these are fire insurance maps from that era. And just to briefly call out a few things of note, the buildup of industry along the Harlem River. As you can see, there's been a lot of infill. So our street grid is now in place, more or less. And we've actually filled in a little bit of the Harlem River. And also what's important to note here is that we have 3rd Avenue and 2nd Avenue, these elevated railroad lines, which were known as the L's. A few of you are probably can remember that. They were still around up till the 1960s. This is a blown up version of that map. Traced here, outlined in dashed in red lines here, is the original Randall's farm map that we just saw previously from 1820. And highlighted in orange was the burial ground. So this is for your reference, and this will become useful as we progress through the presentation. At this period, the property is sold off, and it becomes an amusement park. It has a rifle range, it has a dance hall, and it also has a casino. And that picture up there represents the Harlem Casino as it looked like in this time period. 1933, we see the development of 2 more railroad lines, what we know today as the 2 and 3 line along Lenox Avenue, and what we know today as the 4, 5, and 6 line along Lexington. As we can still see, we have the elevated railway lines as well. Let's go to the next slide. By this time, 1933, our site has transformed from an amusement park into a movie studio. And that picture again is what the movie studio looked like in the 1930s. 1952, we already see here the creep of the super blocks, which are commonplace here in East Harlem, public housing highlighted in orange. And now we see the disappearance of one of the elevated lines along 2nd Avenue, which we're currently trying to reclaim through the 2nd Avenue QT line that's currently under construction today. This is a blown up version of that map. Again, highlighted in orange is our original burial ground. And now we see that, again, the site has transformed. By 1947, the site has, from a movie studio, it has actually become what it is today, which is a bus depot. 2014, again, the development of more public housing super blocks. And also some interesting things to note. In deep purple, condominium units that now dot the landscape, and also big box retail right here. Hopefully, you'll get a chance later on to maybe inspect this more closely. There's a lot of call-outs here that are worth and interesting to note. 2014, this is as the site exists today. And again, that picture, if you haven't seen it, is along 2nd Avenue, looking at the frontage of the bus depot today. Site analysis. So here we are in Upper Manhattan, East Harlem, our site in red. Project site. Not surprisingly, there's a lot of traffic around our site due to the FDR, Harlem River Drive, and there's a lot of vehicular congestion. Economic development. As I mentioned earlier, phase 3 of the 2nd Avenue line is expected to be built, hopefully someday. The QT line here. The Metro North, 4, 5, 6, 2, and 3. And across from us, number 5 is what's known as the East Harlem Media, Entertainment, and Cultural Center, which is in the pipeline and proposed to be developed. Also, Potemkin Auto, there are talks of a possible development there as well. And also important to note, the extension of the Harlem River Esplanade, which will tie into our project, as you will see shortly. Subway lines, pretty far away, requires more than a 5-minute walk to access these. Bus lines, there's a profusion on our site. There's actually a bus stop, the M15, directly on our site. As you can see here, there's quite a network. So there's a lot of bus transportation. This factored heavily into the design, as you will see. This is the effect from Superstorm Sandy. This is the floodplain, and it actually reached the 11-foot marker, which is what you see here highlighted in blue, highlighted in white. This white marker. So flooding occurred up to that point, and is something that our project needed to address. The 100-year floodplain, which is not at all dissimilar to Superstorm Sandy, and with climate change expected to become more and more commonplace. These are the evacuation zones. We are within a Zone 2 area. And these are just some demographic statistics about East Harlem. Primarily Hispanic, primarily Puerto Rican, Mexican. About half the population makes less than $50,000. And about half the population is on some sort of income support structure. Breakdown of gender, it's nearly 50-50. By and large, the population is between 25 and 44, as indicated in this light blue color. There are a number of households, the majority of which are non-family households. And not surprisingly, it's a 92% renter-occupied area. The design concept. So this is as the bus depot as it exists today. So the next couple of slides will kind of take you through step by step how the design was slowly built up and how we achieved